Today we are welcoming Mary to the Shift Happens podcast and our first visual podcast going up as well. So, welcome in.
Thank you. Super excited to be the kind of like inaugural video guest. Like I was saying in the green room, I love video. I think it's such a great way to be able to connect to people in your audience. So I think this is going to be super fun.
Absolutely. I was like, who better to do this with than the person who knows the most about fear that I've probably ever talked to. So, this is perfect timing to go all in on the visual and kind of face my own fear of
Awesome.
showing up like this.
Like, it's hard to be seen sometimes, right? Especially if you're being
Absolutely.
vulnerable but it definitely makes such a difference because we're visual humans, right? I mean, we're visual species, and being
Exactly.
able to see those reactions, I think, is a really valuable option.
Well, the book behind you, in that book called Brave New You, you wrote in it, and I love this part, it stuck out to me when I was reading it myself, that for most of your life, you felt like you were only living in two shades of the rainbow. And even though you kept telling yourself that that was enough, deep down you knew it wasn't. So take us there. What was that? What was that like?
Yeah, someone had said this to me, and it was just like stuck in my head. If it's not one thing, it's your mother. Now I know you're a mother, so I didn't want to like say it, but it came from my mom and my upbringing. Like many aspects of who we are as adults, that foundation is set when we're young. And in my household, you could be happy, that was fine. You could be cheery, you could be upbeat, all great. But any of these like big emotions, like being afraid or being angry or what we would consider the uncomfortable or darker emotions
Yeah.
absolutely were not allowed. And so growing up, since, I wasn't allowed to feel those, I just shoved them in a little box and pretended like they didn't exist. And part of that is why I felt so comfortable in the sciences, because in science, we are taught that it's not about us, it's about the data. It's not about how we feel, it's about what we know and what we can prove. And
Right.
we're constantly being told, pull out your emotions. They don't belong here. I'm like, yes, my people.
I found my place.
Right? Like, oh, it's so comfy, like a little blankie, the way I don't have to actually express my emotions and I can just,
Yep.
keep on keeping on, pretending like they don't exist. But then as I got into my late 20s, and being able to travel internationally, which I did a lot by myself because I come from a family where I'm still the only one to go to college. Out of 5 kids, the only one that graduated high school, and no one in my family had a passport. And I wanted this different life for myself. And
Right.
being able to travel and experience so many different people, I'm like, I think other people live differently. Maybe
Right.
I should look into that because they seem to be able to express more emotions than just being happy.
Wow. So, do you feel like you kind of absorbed that from your upbringing? Like you absorbed the not being able to show different emotions, and like you had said, you boxed them in, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, it wasn't really until my late 20s where I started to dig into not just the self-exploration aspects, but because I'm a scientist, because I'm an academic, I went into the research, right? Because that's the safe
Right.
space for me. That I'm like, I don't know how to do emotions. I'm going to study them. That was a natural place for me to start. What brought me to studying fear and courage and bravery was there wasn't hardly anything available for like a toolkit or even a
Right.
discussion unless it was about the pathology of the brain. Instead of like, my area is working in human optimization. So I'm not in a clinic. I don't see patients. I'm not, excited about, well, let's talk about what's broken. I'm
Yeah.
excited about, let's talk about just how to make our experience with the stuff that we have better. I mean,
Right.
it's, we all have this equipment that we're just born with, and it's not that we're broken. We just need to start to change that conversation about feeling these big feelings that are just totally normal, everyday, what we would call stress, and
Yeah.
and give us some tools so that we can have them in our back pocket and we can navigate through them when they inevitably are going to come up, because that's called being a human.
Right.
Instead of just telling people, oh, just be fearless, get it on a mug, it's fine. That's not helpful.
I
Like, it's
love
so
it.
not helpful. It's just, and it makes people feel ashamed when they do feel
Yes.
afraid, and everyone's be like, I don't feel fear. I'm like, cool, I guess it's just me. I'll just be
Right.
quiet over here. That doesn't help anybody. that doesn't make you less afraid. It
Right.
makes you even more afraid because now you are ashamed and feeling like you're alone and afraid to express these things to even people that you really love and trust. And, changing that conversation, I think is a huge step forward.
Absolutely. Would you say that when you went abroad and you saw all of these different emotions happening, that was like your shift happens moment where you thought, okay, let me start digging into this? Or was there something else that was like your pivotal moment?
I mean, I think like everyone, there's a bunch of those milestones, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's going to be something that has spanned many years and is kind of that piece of not just what you do professionally, but who you are as a person. I think I definitely, one of the early shifts would be when I was at NASA working on STS 107, and that is going to be the space shuttle mission that we lost all hands on reentry, and that was a big shift moment of seeing how people can be at the top of their game and all of the scientists that went into working payload as well as the mission itself and the astronauts themselves, and everyone's doing everything right, but this tiny tiny piece completely, ruins everything, removes these wonderful, brilliant, hardworking humans from our experience and their families, and how I wanted to kind of really be strategic about my life. Like I wanted to have this big life. And that's really kind of my first entree of, okay, maybe I need to access more of my emotions, right? And of course, being exposed to so many different cultures and ways of living was another big shift. And just kind of, continuing on this curiosity path of, oh, how can I understand myself better? And I do that through science. And that allows me to understand other humans better too, and to be able to have deeper empathy and deeper understanding for people that I think that we all, the whole world, can, always use a little bit more empathy.
For sure. I mean, going into the whole NASA topic as well is like you didn't just study fear. You ran straight into it with NASA, PhD, lectures. What was all of that like in that time period of your life?
Yeah, I think it's just for me, I've always been dedicated to accessing things that I wasn't born to access. Like I
Yeah.
said, I come from a family that is, very blue collar. No one went into college or academics. And I wanted to live a life that wasn't the one necessarily was the pathway that I was born into. And that meant constantly having to push myself. And once I got comfortable, I knew it was time to push myself some more. That it's not that fear is ever going to go away. I
Right.
do keynote speaking and corporate kind of like workshops a lot. And the bigger the audience, there's always going to be that trepidation, especially, right
Right.
before you go on stage. Like, are they going to
Yes.
like me? Like, what if they throw tomatoes? I don't know. And that doesn't, mean that you haven't come so far, but that means that you're pushing yourself and finding
Right.
that edge of fear and saying like, okay, I'm feeling this way because I'm about to do something bigger or better or something brand new that I've never done before. And that's a good way to know that you are continuing to push yourself to grow and to expand in whatever areas are important to you. And if you get to the point where you're kind of just like phoning it in and everything is like, super simple because you're like, all day I'm already like an expert in everything and it
Yeah.
doesn't make me afraid to do anything in this space anymore. Really kind of deciding, is that the person that you want to be? That
Right.
wakes up every day knowing that nothing is going to test your mettle, that it's just going to be, punching in, punching out. And hey, if that's the person you want to be, then hey, as long as you're happy with that, great.
Right.
But for me, I wanted to constantly push myself to see how much more I could do. And part of that is being afraid because then you're like,
Right.
okay, now I can find the edge when I start to feel those sensations.
Yeah, you took the fear into real life. You applied the experiment and took
Yeah.
it real life. Yeah, talk about testing a hypothesis. You
Yeah.
truly tested it.
Yeah, I like to be my own guinea pig.
Yes. You were like, it's not enough to test it or examine it. I'm going to do the fearful things of my own. But I feel like that's just more of a testament to your own findings through this and what you speak about in your book. And especially with you have this thing about fictional and factual fear, correct? Can you
Yes.
elaborate?
Yeah. So also for your audience, if they go to hellobravenewYou.com, all
Yeah,
of the stuff that I talk about today is going to be in visual downloads. And for me, I'm a visual person. And so,
same.
like, yeah, it's just love to have that visual, which is why I'm super excited for this next chapter for you to do like the video aspects. But if they are watching on video, then they'll be able
Yeah,
to download a copy of this, which is the RAIN method. And I'll jump into that fictional and factual fear, as well as some of and we can talk about like the neuro hack cards, and
yeah,
they're downloadables as well. And again, like I wanted to make it easy for people so that you actually use it. Because if it's
right.
complicated or there's too many steps, I mean, I won't do it. Like,
Same. I'll be like, okay, try again later, and then later never
right?
comes.
Yep, yep. I want it to be easy to remember. I want it to be something that people are actually going to use, because you can have all of the motivational books, self-development books in the world, but if you don't
Right.
have any action steps, nothing changes, right?
Absolutely.
Nothing changes.
Agreed.
And so part of, the RAIN method is looking at and recognizing is going to be the R of RAIN, that first step. And when we look at the types of fear that we have, we can kind of grossly categorize it into what I call fictional and factual fear. In the
Yes.
literature, in the scientific literature, it's called clean and dirty fear, but I feel that's so problematic for language. It's
Yes.
just
Yeah.
like, no, okay, that's just weird. And so, like fictional versus factual, just kind of like your book or your, reading or a TV show, the factual fear is going to be in the moment, something that
Yes.
we share in that moment. I use the kind of example of you're walking down a busy street and a car makes like a really big noise and everyone stops and our brains are like, okay, do I need to react to that? Where's that noise coming from?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see. It's just a car. Everyone's fine. They're not screaming. I'm just going to go out, on about my day. But we
Right.
all like shared that in the moment, something that we needed to pay attention to. Luckily, it was fine. Nothing scary. We just, okay. Then we're not going to ruminate about it while we're laying in bed that night being like, wow, that car backfired. Did I do enough? Was I good enough during that? Like, no, we're just like, we just move on and with our day. And, fictional fear is going to be the type of fears that we have the most ability to influence, because and there's going to be the most like nefarious ones where,
Yeah.
fictional fears are I'm not good enough, or imposter syndrome, or
Absolutely.
nobody loves me, I'm unlovable. All these things that do keep us up at night or wake us up at 3 a.m. And we play over and over and again, like in our head, right?
Hmm.
And with fictional fears, it could have, just like any good story, could have some nugget of truth in terms of like an event that happened or something that is factual, but it's not happening right now. And it's something that we continue to kind of like chew on or ruminate or worry about, right?
Right.
And when we're in a kind of event where we're having to deal with factual fear, our body absolutely just is going to go into like go mode, and we don't need to worry about it in that moment. And really, the ones that we want to work on and how like kind of process and navigate through are going to be those fictional fears, and those are the ones that keep us living small, playing small, unhappy, and not able to connect to the things that really bring us joy in our life.
Right. Hey, prime example right here is me never doing visual
Yeah.
for the entire time I've had this podcast out until right now, because imposter syndrome is real. Fear
Yeah.
is real. And sometimes you just have that fear of being seen fully for all the flaws, all the issues
Yeah.
that could arise. And yeah, hey, I'm the prime example of that one.
Yeah, yeah, right. And when you start to look at the different ways that these, tiny fears work into our choices and the way that we show up in our whole life,
Yeah.
the ability to connect to other people. And like, there's just so many ways other than we kind of, when people think about fear, they kind of think about like the big ones,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, I need to like do a public speaking thing. And then, that's the biggest fear. Or people will love to go to like, oh, I'm afraid of spiders, right? But we're not
Yes.
worrying about spiders at night, unless there's a
Right.
spider in the corner in your bedroom, then we're worried about
Then I'm
spiders,
worried about
right?
it.
Right? But otherwise, we don't go to bed thinking about spiders. Like,
Right.
it's just something that, or clowns, right? When people, like, we have these conversations in the events that I do, that's kind of like the first tier that people will immediately go to when they want to share something that is, like, okay, tell me about, like, a fear you have,
Yeah.
public speaking, spiders, snakes, clowns, those big ones. But that's not really what's keeping us from the life that we want. Right? It's the imposter syndrome. It's the I'm not enough. It's the I don't have enough control over this situation. And part of that is coming to the recognized part. So in the recognized stage, thinking about what your personal physical tells are, because sometimes because fear is on a spectrum. It's not going to be an on or off. And if it's a really big fear, what's happening, right? But it's those everyday, like, small ones that is really the problem. So for me, I'm a shoulder scruncher. Shoulders to be like, like when I'm holding stress, right? Which is generally like a fear arousal response with our amygdala getting fired up, which is kind of like our brain's fear center. My shoulders will be like scrunched up. I'm a jaw clencher.
I was going to say that.
Right. Yeah. And then and then by the end, you're like, ow, man.
Yes.
Like, what am I doing? And people sometimes are like, wait, that's just stress. You're like, yeah, stress is just a term that we use as a kind of catch-all bucket for all of the aspects of the fear arousal response. Right.
Interesting.
So like overwhelm, all these other things, are part of that amygdala's response to what's happening either in our head or in our environment. And so thinking about what are your tells. Some people have tummy issues. Some people have like clammy hands, like whatever. There's a ton. But what does your body do specifically so that you're like, I'm clenching my jaw. Let me get curious about why I'm doing these things that I know that when my amygdala is starting to get fired up, and it may be because writing this book, I've never told these stories before. It was like really scary. And so, like at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, but getting curious, I'm like, okay, at least I can draw it back to where that is coming from, right? I'm afraid of, is this book going to be well received? Are people going to hate it? Are they going to be like, oh my gosh, she's fill in the blank, like bad things that we always think about. And then kind of just recognizing, all right, well, what do I need to do right now? Am I going to apply some neuro hacks? Am I just going to step away? Because maybe that's also the answer. And in that moment, then the second stage is going to be a sign. And this on this card, which I tell people, is super tiny because you can't really get it. But that's why there's a digital one. And what I tell people is like this fear wheel. It has all the different names. And in a sign, in this stage, you just want to pick one word for the like emotion or sensation that you're feeling in that moment. A lot of the power of the RAIN method is what's called pigeonholing. So our brains like order because our world is chaotic. When we see order, it helps us feel safe because life is chaos, but chaos feels scary. So having just like picking that one specific word. So let's say, in that moment I was, feeling overwhelmed or anxious, or I was feeling, trepidation, or, like finding one of the words on the fear wheel that you can associate with, I recognize my body's telling me something. I'm going to give it exactly one word. And people love to fight me on this one because they're like, well, I have more than one word that, matches. I'm like, I get it, but only pick one. Because that's the process is the point, right?
Yes.
And then, as you're getting curious, and anytime, many people, they'll get to like stage 2 and feel better. Right. So you don't have to complete all 4 steps, but, complete them until you feel better. And then step 3 is going to be identify. And when we recognize that we're having this fear response, we've assigned it a single word, and now we're going to put it into one of 2 buckets. So when we look at kind of just the everyday normal fears, they generally are going to fall into 2 very general buckets. Either the fear of not being enough, which would be like imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Or the fear of losing control. And within that, sometimes we have really complicated fears and they can be a little of both. But again, in this stage, just pick one, because allowing that classification is where the power is in this type of like methodology. Going back to the idea of, okay, me writing these stories, my personal stories in the book, and I signed that one single word. Now I'm going to identify where is this coming from? It's not fear of losing control so much as fear of not being enough, fear of not being a good enough writer, a good enough scientist, a good enough woman, a good enough fill in the blank, right? Everything just like right? Like the 100 million things that could go in that bucket. Because when things are nebulous and they're just floating around, we feel even less in control. And that makes us, that makes our amygdala ramp up. And having this ability to say, okay, I'm putting this in a bucket, and I'm going to, have that understanding that now I feel like at least I can understand and navigate through it instead of it just
Yeah.
being like this messy whatever happening in my head. And then the fourth step is going to be navigate. So for navigate, this is where the neuro hacks come in. I have lots of them. I think there's like
Yeah.
70 something in the book or so whatnot. And they're interchangeable. So on the infographic that people can download from hellobravenewYou.com, I have box breathing, which is something that the Navy SEALs use, which is so awesome. I love it. But you can really change out any of the neuro hacks for that one. Since we're doing audio, I'm going to do like not the box breathing. When we do a podcast, you're like, okay, everyone, I'm going to breathe really slowly into the mic.
We got some like ASMR going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just got my nails done, so maybe I could.
Oh, that was a good one.
Gosh. Right. So this is one of my favorites. It's called Pinch the Valley. And I start with my right to my left. It doesn't matter which way though, but I'm right hand dominant. So take your hand, like I'm just going to sample that, but it doesn't matter. So with my left hand, I'm going to make an L. And then with my right hand, with my thumb and my forefinger, I'm going to pinch in between that other, hand's thumb and forefinger, but you don't want the webbing. You want like the meaty bit. Right. So right. It's like in the peak of the V of the valley, and you're just going to rub it. You don't need to like dig in there and give yourself a bruise. But what you're doing is you are activating the vagus nerve, and you are allowing your nervous system to get the signal that you are safe. I love this one because you can do it anytime. Like you're in a meeting, you can just do it under like the table, do it before you're about to like, go into something that's stressful. No one knows you're doing it. Right. And like I'm doing it right now. I'm already like, like a little spa
you
day.
can like feel it.
Yeah. And it's something that's really, instant. All of my neuro hacks, I don't do anything like take this pill or whatever. Like everything's going to be safe, and just to play around with these things, see what works best for your body and what you are going to do because it feels good. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I can feel that like right away. And then some things will work for some people and other ones won't, but that's why they're interchangeable. So you can, have fun and play with these ideas and these tools, and then build your own kind of unique toolbox.
Right. With this one that you just spoke on, my mind is instantly going, just because I'm a mom of 5, the chaos of motherhood. And when you mentioned the buckets of fear of losing control, I feel like that is where a lot of the motherhood stuff can fall into, because when you're getting that backlash or attitude or something else, it's like the fear of losing control or losing that respect, which is under losing control. And for in the middle of that, like that's such an easy neuro hack to just sit there and get right into that V spot. And hey, maybe that could help in the moment when you're feeling this arousal.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, for kids, I personally don't have children myself, but I think that if looking back on my own childhood, I would have loved to have these tools or even this conversation about you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You can feel these big feelings, but let's have some tools so that you and I can navigate through them together. I mean, completely different everything, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Of having that conversation. And this is, like I've done some kind of like workshops for kids, and they love the cards, right? Yeah. Because it's a fun thing and it's easy. The book is going to be geared towards adults. And I mean, I think like 272 pages. Like 7-year-old is not going to read this self-development 270-page book, but the neurohacking cards are meant to be something quick, easy, that it's all encapsulated in the card to learn these tools. You don't have to necessarily read the book. And that can be really powerful for kids because everyday fear, it's not going away. It's just part of like, it's just being a human. And it's such a funny conversation where some people, I mean, there's so many people that don't even want to say the F word, right? They're just like, no, like fear. No, I don't do that. I'm like,
that's not even in my vocabulary.
Yeah. Right. And how do we change that conversation? But also, let's rethink this whole idea of shame that we've put on this totally normal everyday experience. Like we don't give people shame for breathing. It's just, that's how you do. Like it's because you're a human and you're alive. You got to breathe. But we give so much shame to the natural human experience of some emotions. And it's just, I think, really unfair to think
Yeah.
that we can be just 100% happy, happy, go, go, lucky, like unicorns, rainbows all the time. Like it's just, it's not something that is reality. And then as children are told they can't feel some of their emotions, that's going to come out all kinds of different ways. For me, it was just masking, right? I'll just pretend.
Yeah.
And like, I just won't be like, no, I'll just shove it in a box. What could go wrong? But it can go so many other different ways when it doesn't have to.
Right. Right. Have you noticed like any similarities or patterns in people that are scared to use the F word of fear or even to
I
acknowledge that it exists for them?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky that people will self-select that come to my shows and my workshops,
Yes.
that they're open to these kind of things.
Right.
Usually when I find those people in an interaction, it's going to be like some kind of like mixed event where people like let's say a networking thing at a conference, right? And
Yeah.
especially as Americans, so what do you do? It's like the first question out of
Yes.
everyone's mouth, right? Like, hey,
Everybody.
what do you do? Right? And I'm here in Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, the next question is, oh, what part of LA are you in? Because that's going to decide whether I'm going to be your friend. Only because the
Yes.
traffic is so bad. And if you live on the other side, you're like, we'll never see each other because it'll be like 4 hours trying to get to you. And that's when I kind of get people kind of fighting me on it. And they're like, well, I don't have any fear. I'm like, well, cool. That's amazing. High five. Internally, I'm like, I think you are full of it. But
Yeah.
externally, I'm like, that's great. Good for you. So I just, I'm not going to fight people over it. But a lot of times I've had people trying to like really convince me that they really don't have fear. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't say you did it. Like, all right. But they need that validation.
Yes.
Cool.
They have to get that word in to make
Yeah.
themselves feel a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. I do find that, the women that have had those types of conversations with me tend to be in really high stress, male dominated fields. And so
Yeah.
if I had to do some armchair like extrapolation of why, it's because they've had to mask and they've had to be this idea of a person to survive in that hyper competitive male dominated field.
Right.
And they feel that, oh, if I ever show fear, right, show no fear because then they
Yeah.
won't respect you. Um, that could be a piece of it, but I think it's such a personal thing to want to explore who you are, to want to have introspection, to want
Yeah.
to look at your life and analyze and try and find ways that you could be better, live better. And that's not everyone's jam. It's just, like trying to be a better person is hard.
It
It's
is.
just
Right.
right. It's really hard. It's so much easier to just, pretend like you're perfect and just keep on keeping on and
Stay
not
where
change
you're at.
anything. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Growth is hard. Growth is hard.
It is.
And not everybody wants to do it. And that's fine, to each their own. I'm always in support of, as long as you're not hurting other people, you do you, boo.
Yeah. Oh, I say that all the time. You do you, boo. I say it
Yeah.
all the time. But yeah, that's what I say a lot here at Shift Happens is change is inevitable, but growth is a choice because it is a choice. It's a hard choice, but
Yeah.
it's a choice that you have to keep on making. And speaking on the exploration and the introspection, I know that you have jumped out of planes. You've
Yeah.
had this
I
interaction with a
sprained my
bear.
ankle. Yeah. And I sprained my
Yeah.
ankle like landing. I'm like, why? I'm not a klutz, but I mean, just sometimes.
And that could have like solidified some type of fear that you had about it if you were like fearful of getting hurt or something. That could have just like nailed it right in there for you. But you even had a showdown with a bear over pizza. Like I have to know more.
Yeah. No, that's one of my favorite stories. I was in Mount Whitney. So my boyfriend for his birthday, wanted to hike Mount Whitney, which is like 32 miles up and back. And I'm like, I'll run base camp support. I'm not doing 30. I mean, I feel like I'm a little sporty spice, but not that sporty. Like there's no way my 5'2" person was going to make it up and back on no. And so his son, who was an adult at the time, they both did it. Right. And so I had to drop them off at 5 a.m. And, they're hitting the trailhead. And because it was his birthday, because they were, again, just going to go to the top and come right back down, I wanted to surprise them with a man pizza, like all the meats and the cheeses from at the bottom of the mountain. There was like a little tiny town. So, I get the pizza, super excited for myself because I'm going to get all the high fives because they're going to have these hungry boys coming off the trail. And like, I'm a hero. And so I, drive up to the parking lot, and I knew it's going to be like, a couple hours for them to get off the trail because we had like intermittent cell phone texting, but it wasn't great
Yeah.
cell, like, so I kind of knew they'll be here ish. And so, I get out of the car, and we had just adopted our dog Bandit like 2 days before. He was 8 weeks old, and he wasn't old enough to be on the ground because how the shots are, right, for vaccinations. And so I had him with me, and so we get out in the parking lot, and this guy comes over, like long white hair, basically like the California Gandalf. And he's like, just randomly, he's like, "Oh, you got food in there, little lady?" Like that kind of condescending voice. And I was a field biologist for many years, and like that just raised my hackles as soon as anyone talks to like, "Hey, little lady," I'm just like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So immediately, I don't even care what you're about to say because I know it's gonna be condescending. And he's like, "Do you have food in there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have a pizza." I'm just being kind of like short and snarky because I'm with this guy to just leave. And he's like, "You should put it in the bear box." I'm like, "It'll be fine. I'm just waiting for some boys to come off the trail." And he's like, "Oh no, no." I'm like, "Ah, whatever. If you'll go away, I will go put it in the bear box," right? And because I'm in the parking lot, I'm not even thinking that, because usually black bears, which is what we have here in California, are kind of, like anti-people for the most part, especially like if there's a high concentration, like a parking lot. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And so I go over, put the pizza, with other people's food in the big, huge 6 foot by, like 10 foot metal box for everyone's food. And so the guys come off the, trail, and we're at the car, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll be right back. I have a surprise for you." And I'm like skipping down. I'm like, "I'm going to be the best girlfriend ever." And so I'm like, at this point, because again, had been a couple hours. So the pizza got like pushed in the back because other people had come that were going to camp and put their food in there. And so I'm in there, I'm like kind of almost in the whole thing with my body, and like trying to reach for the pizza because it's like way in the back. And then I hear this like yelling, but it's not yelling in English, but it's definitely yelling words.
Oh no.
And I'm just like, "Oh, that's not for me," because like don't even know what language it is, but someone's like yelling. They're probably, maybe their kid is running around or something. So I'm just like, "La la la, pizza, pizza, pizza." So I finally grab the pizza, and I look up, and on top of the bear box, like kind of like inches from my face, is this black bear. And that's what the people were yelling about. So probably in whatever language it was like, "Bear,
right,
stupid lady, bear." And so I was just like, expletives. And I slammed the bear box door because I'm a good neighbor, and I grab my pizza and I start running because that pizza was $45. I was not going to give that.
You're not
pizza,
wasting that money.
Like, no. And so I'm running, yelling at Craig, who's my boyfriend. I'm like, start the car, bear, bear. And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Bear." And so to his credit, he totally like did as I said. He jumps in the car, and his son like barrel rolls into the back seat, and like, I like jump in the car, and we like take off. He's like, "So wait, what?" He's like, "Did you actually say bear?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, why do you still have the pizza?" And I'm like, "Because it's a $45 pizza. I'm not just gonna give it to the bear." So we take off. So I don't know how far the bear got. Maybe the bear was just like, "Oh, this person's crazy. I don't need their food," because there's crazy sauce on that. I don't know. But it was so like in the moment, again, like that was an example of factual fear of, in general, like, black bears are not overtly aggressive, but they're huge, and it was very close to my face. And so, my amygdala kicked in, like, yeah, it's time to run. And my frugalness kicked in of also take the pizza.
Hey, we have to have a healthy balance.
Right. Yeah. So both those things happened. It was a split-second decision. I didn't have to like worry, like, "Oh, is the bear gonna not like me? Does the bear think I'm fat? Does the bear like, think about other, girls?" Like, no, it's just in the moment, my body knew what to do, and we executed the plan. Now, was it the smartest choice ever? No, but it was in the moment, like based on what my brain thought was a good idea. That's what we did, right? And so in the car, again, like I wasn't trying to worry or feel bad about my decision, because I'm like, was in the moment, and that's just what happened. But so many times when it's those fictional fears, we're constantly chewing on like, "Oh, I could have done this better, I should have said this better," or like, and it gnaws at you. And that's the insidious part of that fictional fear, that it does keep us up at night. And those are the types of fears that end up giving us the kind of like long-term health issues, the physical health issues that we associate with stress, right? The cardiovascular issues, the digestion issues. And until we start to, like really deal with these little threads throughout our day, they can really encroach and make a huge difference in our like physical health, our mental health, and in our ability to enjoy our life.
Yeah. Instead of a physical bear gnawing at you, it's a it's a bear on the inside.
Yes.
That just keeps going.
Right? Yeah, no, I totally love that. You are the pizza and the fear.
Yes, the bear is just trying to get it.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, it was just, it's, I think for me, if let's say luckily I didn't have any kind of like fear associated with the, spraining my ankle after jumping out of the plane. Or the bear story, right? Like, 'cause I find it funny. I'm the first to like laugh at myself and my own actions. But if, let's say I did, let's say that like, I'm never going in nature again, or I'm not going to do things that scare me again. I'm just going to stay in my blanket cave. And, it would be such a different life, and a life that, I say I want a big life. I say I want an adventurous life. And to let that one instance stop me, then I'm not able to live the life that I say that I want.
Right. I know that you've said writing the book Brave New You was one of the bravest things you've done. Why?
It was the hardest. Oh my God, that book almost killed me. It's the navigating the personal stories and making sure the stories that I was telling were in service of the audience. And many times it's always really powerful to share emotional stories. Like funny stories are easy to share, right? Because those are fun and like you're getting to relive like the moment, and it's like, but the hard ones around, the way I was, raised, and trying to pick and choose what stories are going to illustrate and illuminate these things, and what stories are maybe just kept for the stage. Like what kind of, and reliving these things, many, like the childhood stuff was obviously like, from a very long time ago, knowing that these stories weren't just going to be between like me and my partner or me and my best friend. These stories were now on the global stage. But I knew that I didn't want it to just be about the science, that in order for people to connect to the science, we as scientists need to do a better job at showing our humanity. And you do that through story. We as humans learn best through story. And I've written for textbooks, I've written academic stuff, and that is so much easier because it's not about you, right? You don't exist in those types of pieces of, like whether it's a chapter in a textbook, it's just about the science.
Right.
Where these were my stories that I was sharing with the world. When you're sharing a story like you and I are here, I can get cues, whether you're like feeling it, whether you're vibing with it, or you're like, oh my God, this is the dumbest story. Please stop talking. Right. And so I can get that feedback. But on a book, I don't know, maybe everyone's be like, read this story, like, this is the dumbest story I've ever read. And you don't know that. So you're just imagining all of these different things. And it took a lot of emotional labor to do that. I remember I worked with Brene Brown's editor for the like line by line edits. And the first round of edits that I got back on the manuscript, I couldn't even look at them for like a week. Like I couldn't even just open them. I was like so terrified. I'm like, I can't. Like I was literally just no.
Right.
And it's, it's nothing that was actually physically going to harm me by opening up the email. But I literally just didn't even open up the email. It's like, edits back. I'm like, la, 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 I'm just gonna like it there. It's because I wasn't emotionally ready to have this feedback. And it was with, my publishers, Hachette. And so we had, a constant like team of people going through the edits. And even then, perfectionism is an expression of fear many times. I had so many editors and so many hands in the cookie jar. And when I went to read, so I did the audiobook narration for the book as well. At this point, we had already gone to print, so there's nothing to be done about it until we do a reprint. There was like a handful of typos that nobody caught. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But I caught it because I was reading it and I was like, no, are you like, there's nothing to be done. And now I get all this fear of people being like, you didn't use a spell check? There was so many people that had their hands on this. I don't know how this happened. I don't know. And, just even that kind of thing that people are, they're going to think that, I'm uneducated because there's typos, and there's not a lot, but enough. Like it should have been 0, but here we are. It was a long pandemic. So, And it's one of those things that sometimes you just have to decide, do I want to give my life force to this fear, or do I just like is it big enough that I need to do something about it, or do I
Yeah.
just want to let it go? And the thing with like the typos, I'm like, I just got to let it go, because we can't fix it until we do the second printing. And if people think that that makes me less of a fill in the blank, like, I can't do anything about it. Right. Like,
Right.
it's just, and picking and choosing your battles, if you will, because it takes
Right.
energy to change anything, like you were saying. And sometimes you're just like, nah, it's not worth it.
Right.
There's so many other things that need my energy. Like, you're going to think what you're going to think. And like,
Gotta
all
let it
right.
go.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You do you, boo.
Yes.
Saying.
Yes. Exactly why I love that saying.
Right. And having that kind of like almost like a mantra of, I
Yes.
can't, like, I can't control you as a person, barely controls me as a human, because humaning is hard. So I need to put all my
Yes.
energy in the things I can control. And it's not other people's experience or kind of opinions of my work. I want to be in service to the audience always. And
Right.
it's gonna, vibe with some people, and it's not with others. And that has to be okay. And I
Absolutely.
think that's a hard part of the book writing process as well. Of there's always that piece of you, well, for me, that wants to please everybody, except it's impossible.
Right.
It's not possible. As a person, I'm not an agitator in that way. Like, there's some people that love to just stir the pot and
Yeah.
poke the bear, if you will.
Poke the bear. The
Right?
bear's
Yeah.
back.
I know. But then that's not me as a person. Like, I'm a people pleaser by nature. Making a creative anything, if you try and make it for every single person, no one's
Yeah.
gonna like it, because it's too vanilla, it doesn't have any teeth, and
Right.
it's not gonna help anyone transform if you're just making it for everyone to find okay.
Right. I thought it was interesting how you brought up the storytelling aspect, because something that I have loved as I've gotten into guest interviews, because fun fact, I went through a year of failing at a podcast because I was making it for everyone. I was trying to
Yeah.
filter myself, making it for everyone and what I thought they needed to hear. And then I completely rebranded with all of the lessons that I learned, and I became me. Totally unfiltered,
Yes.
just went for it, and look at where we're at now. So that says something in its own.
Yes.
However, through the guest interviewing process, my personal favorite thing is the storytelling, because you can have all these titles, which you do. You have a PhD, you've got all of these very shiny like accolades and et cetera, right? My favorite thing is the story behind all of that. I love getting to hear
Mm.
how you became you, what made you you at the end of the day, because I think that we can get so caught up in those titles
Yeah.
and recognitions that we forget that we're all human. And that has been my absolute favorite thing through all of these guest episodes, is that every single person, whether they were like this friend that I knew forever or someone very well accomplished, everybody has a story to them about how they got to become their brave new you.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. And we connect through stories.
Yes.
I could just come on here and talk about the safe stuff, right? I
Yep.
could just talk about the amygdala and its impact on our prefrontal cortex and just stick to the science.
Yes.
But that's not going to be as interesting than even to like a hardcore science crowd. Stories make everything more interesting. Usually when people are telling a story, they become more alive in their communication.
Oh, yes.
And being able to see other people, especially like, let's say, just scientists, see them as human, and
Yeah.
like, oh, you have the same experiences or fears or things as me. Okay, like, it's that ability to connect. I think that is really that power of story.
Absolutely. So, someone listening right now is stuck. They're smart, they're capable, but fear is running the show. What do you want them to hear from you loud and clear right now?
Practice, right? Practice and
Yeah.
play. I think that we wait for the perfect solution. Even like I love, me and my team have been working on like the neurohack cards, because sometimes you can't do a book, right? Like,
Right.
the book is too much, because if you are really stuck, if you're really in the weeds, even that can seem overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like, just start somewhere. And if it's just that pinch the valley,
Yeah.
just start with something and play around with things. A lot of my work, both in my keynotes as well as my workshops, I bring in like, the power of play, because when we see something as something that we can be curious about or playful with, it changes our perspective than something that is a problem or an issue. And if we just look at something as this is like an insurmountable problem, it really shuts down how we are able to solve it. But if we see it, if we come at it in this way of like, okay, let me just play around with some solutions. It's okay if they don't work, whatever. Like, because when we go into something playful, whether that's a game or, a sport or whatever playful things, even just, playing something like, easy with your kids, like you don't
Yeah.
go into it as like, oh, this insurmountable problem that has to have a perfect solution, right? You're like, no, let's just sit on the floor and play. Like it's, you grab a Barbie, I'll grab a Barbie. Like it doesn't need to be perfect. Like that's not the point. It's just that we're showing up and we're doing something.
Yeah.
And it's just, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, I find that when people are stuck, they'll continue to try and put more information in their head than they can really handle at that time. Like I'll take another class online, I'll take I'll read another inspiring book, but then nothing is changing. And that's because the action part isn't there. Right. And there's a, talked about like, like the courage equation. So fear plus action equals courage.
Yep.
But you have to like the fear, that's easy. Like, that's going to show up whether you ask
that's
for
already
it or
there.
not. Right. So like, ooh, okay, step one done. But having that action, even if it's like tiny, doesn't need to be this whole big thing. Even if it's just like one little baby neuro hack, fear plus that action, that's where courage lies.
I love that redefining kind of definition, if that makes sense, of courage, because sometimes you're right. Sometimes we think like we need this whole 10-step plan before we even start to move the needle. But if you're binging all the podcast episodes, if you're reading all the self-help books and nothing is changing, then what's the common denominator here?
Yeah.
We have to start moving it. Yes, absolutely. And if that action doesn't happen, then there's nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And it's, I've definitely, been there in seasons of my life of knowing that something needed to change, not knowing which way to go forward, and kind of binging on feel good self-help books, if you will, that had no actionable steps, and you feel good after you read it. You're like, that's so inspiring.
Yeah.
But nothing changes. And so you're like, other than you're out, $28 for the book, but it was maybe an enjoyable romp, right? But you came to that book because you wanted your life to change, not just to live vicariously through someone else's transformation. And sometimes that can be inspiring, and there's a place for those kind of things. But I've found that many times they just don't deliver on the action part. And if you already don't know what to do, like you're like, okay, well, I mean, it's like candy. I feel good right after, but it's not helping me understand how to change my life right now with what I can do right now. And there are tools out there. And kind of one of my big things is, how do I bring a lot of this information out of the primary journals that most people are not going to ever read a research journal? A lot of times the public doesn't even have access to research journals because they're behind academic paywalls. But as a faculty member, I have access to all of this information, and I've been trained to know how to read it and turn it into something that people can use and enjoy the process of. Yes, I talk about fear, courage, innovation, but it's not scary. It's not like unenjoyable. I try not to make it, I try to make it, like with the cards, like I try to make it playful. I try to make it something that is going to be surprising and that people will want to be curious about, instead of, because if we tend to like lean into things that we enjoy, we tend to lean away from things that we don't enjoy. Right. And so you have an immediate gut reaction to even just, the word fear, right? Because you're like, ooh, that feels icky. Unless it's Halloween, like spooky season is my busiest season. Yeah, like then it's because then it's like, ooh, like haunted house or a scary movie. That kind of fear in our society is more acceptable to talk about. Where if it's talking about like the fear of not being enough, or the fear of just people seeing the real you and people not liking it. Right. And you're like, okay, hello, mask. I'll just go put my perfection mask back on. Right. And that is really, I think, the space that the more that we talk about it in just you know, like conversations like this. I mean, when I was a kid, there was no anything in this about like, school or in popular media or, like it's just no one talked about being afraid unless it was in the confines of spooky movies or,
Yeah.
like Halloween kind of stuff. That was fine. And I think that, and, entire generations of people would have a totally different life experience if these conversations in and of themselves, even without the tools, were just more predominant. And we could have this kind of like connection that, hey, I'm feeling this way, you're probably feeling this way, whether it's in the boardroom because, okay, we're going to go into layoffs, that's really scary, or oh, we're going to, create
Yeah.
this, innovative technology or way to cure things. And that's going to be really scary because this has never been done before. And think about all the leaders that could have a totally different impact on their teams if they were just more, authentically themselves than
Yeah.
trying to deliver what they think that their teams need when their teams actually need them to be a human instead of this idea of a leader.
Right. That's one of my favorite things to do here. And why I'm so grateful that you're opening up to have this conversation is just to have those conversations
Yeah.
around these generalized feelings, situations, life happenings that people experience but are rarely talked about or talked about in an authentic way like you just said. So I
Yeah.
love to do that. And yeah, I thank you so much for being here today. Where can my audience connect with you outside of this podcast episode?
Yeah. So if you want to go to hellobraveneu.com, that will redirect to my website because with the last name like Poffenroth, it's not the easiest thing to spell in the whole world. So like it's, you can go to marypoffenroth.com, of course, but just going to the easier to spell Hello Brave New You.
I love it. Well, thank you again for sharing all of this in the storytelling way that we talked about and just kind of pulling that curtain back for us and bringing this topic to light. So, thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome. Thank you.